with Spirit of Matter. And I just want you to look at this chart. Look at this chart. The ascendant was on 21 degrees when I opened this chart just a couple of minutes ago. And the descendant with Jupiter conjunct Uranus, perfecting. Jupiter is on the 21 degree. So it's perfecting on a degree and applying to perfect on the minute. We have the Jupituranus, the ruler Venus, is conjuncting Rahu at 15 degrees Aries. So she's past the minute conjunction, but she's still conjunct on the degree. The midheaven was 27 degrees Leo with the sun in 28 degrees Aries. Mars, that's ruling the Venu Rahu, is in Pisces, 20 degrees Pisces, applying to close a chapter, close a synodic cycle with Neptune. So this brings us back to Jupiter in Taurus, okay, because Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, which would bring us all back to the loop to Mars in a little bit of a never-ending loop. So this is not a Mercury day, it is actually already a Sun night with Venus hour, strong Venus vibes. And I just wanted to go on live for this moment. Big revelations, big things coming up also from 2017. And I just want you to write in the comments below something if you want to share of what came up for you since 2017, because the series of eclipses and with Venus on the nodes, stuff are popping. Okay. So for me, I'm watching an ex-Dutch banker who was a whistleblower and regaining my Dutch in this way. And this is very interesting structurally because when it comes to banking, so banking works in a pyramid way, and the lowest ranks really don't know what's going on. And I can attest to this. I was working for a credit card company. That was a daughter company of a bank, which means it was the same company, but salami. It's the banking salami. Okay, in academia, the salami is when you have one article, but you make 8 out of it because you need to have a quota of articles published. In the banking system, it's basically called a daughter company. And so we did not know what credit score is, and our product, our flagship product, was selling external a credit card that's external to the banks. Just to make it understandable for Americans as well, Israel usually has bank cards. Okay, so your credit card is from the bank, and we also have the ability to go overdraft, which means to have credit from the bank itself rather than the credit card. So it works different. And that was the first introduction of credit cards as Americans know them. So we did not know what credit score is, which was the reason I did not keep a card, by the way, because I did not understand why do I need credit? I'm not a business. I'm supposed to be able to buy everything with cash. There's no reason for me to buy anything without cash. And at the same time, I believe, and I believe this still today, that I'm supposed to be able to buy my house with cash. So today I'm even more radical because I believe in housing first, and I don't believe that we should pay for land. But this is, the more I learn about this, the more I understand. But you can understand how the structure of the fiscal system works in a pyramid way, and the whistleblower I'm listening to is basically kind of more to the top of the pyramid. So he saw the transactions that was connecting, but kind of like a couple of levels below what the elite could see. And he tells the story. He wanted to make money, and so he tells his story. And they told him, okay, you gotta freeze your consciousness. No, your conscious, okay, your moral compass. And he did so, and he defreezed his moral compass automatically when he discovered the resources that go to child sacrifice from what seem to be um, um, abuse of occult knowledge. Okay, and I'm calling it abuse of occult knowledge. If you want to know more about why I'm calling it abuse of occult knowledge and not occult knowledge, that you might want to check Gigi Young, or you might want to look at astrological magic and understand that actual occult practice in our days is not inclusive of sacrifice, definitely not of children and human beings, and um, and even the terms that are used there. Um, how should I say it? If we talk about Abrahamic religions, then the first one was Judaism, and then Abraham was supposed to sacrifice Yitzchak. I became atheistic by this sin alone, and I didn't know that actually Abrahamic religions were progressed to sects that were sacrificing children. So for Abraham, it was logical that the deity asked to sacrifice a child at the time, a couple of millennia ago, and the Abrahamic God says, "No, stop right now. I understand. We established the connection. You don't have to sacrifice anything." Then Abraham begins to insist, and he begins to insist on a bodily sacrifice of himself until they settle on the circumcision. It is a man-made request. It is not a request of the divine. Rabbinical people know this, and they still adhere to believing that the majority of people need that, like Abraham needed that. Okay, so anything to do with child sacrifice is nothing to do with Abrahamic religions. I don't care what name of settlement or protocols or whatnot they put around this. It's nothing to do with Abrahamic religion is not. There are many things to reform around those, but essentially, right from the Judaism, it was not. And later, the Christianity and the Islam, it was not about child sacrifice. There were other problems. Okay, child brides no longer relevant, and we all have ancestral lineage to heal around that. And many other things, okay? And being homosexual has nothing to do with child molestation. In the past, you separated boys and girls, and so if children were molested, it would always happen by the same-sex teacher or clergyman. But when they began to bring them together, they saw that no, it's not the same, and both in the identity of the perpetrators and the identity of the children. It's not thing to do necessarily with being gay or homosexual or lesbian, but being child perpetrator. So this is another thing that's needed to be understood. And another thing is first of all, what is Satanism? What is Satan? What is Lucifer? So Lucifer, first of all, is associated with Venus, actually. And Venus, as you know it in astrological magic, is the goddess of being comfortable with your sensuality, having value, enjoying the pleasures of life, growing flowers, sharing and gifting things, abundance, okay? Nothing to do with child sacrifice. And when we talk about the people that misused occult, even though we live in our days, and we already know that we can gain the benefits of these deities without any sacrifice. Not only that, it's even preferred for these deities, okay? Because they don't need that. They don't need that. It's a sense of connection that we cultivate, and everybody has their own philosophy around this. But human sacrifice and even animal sacrifice is not needed. For blood, so people use menstrual blood or hibiscus. So this is kind of like the symbolism of blood, and it suffice. And even menstrual blood, menstrual blood is ethically sourced. It's not something that's bad. And the next one is Satanism. So Satan, as we all know, is Saturn. And Saturn is the lord of karma. And this is also why the age of Pluto and Saturn, both 2017 Pluto was in Capricorn, And right now, 2024 with Pluto will be in both Aquarius and Capricorn. And I've talked a lot about it. This is for those who are more associated with biblical imagery, this is the imagery of changing times from the fathers that ate rotten fruits and the teeth of the children would rot to the fathers' actions no longer affect the children. Okay, this is the time that we are in. We have an outer planet inside, especially Pluto. Okay, it's a change of the way we think about karma. Okay, so it's going to different moral standards where we kind of like in an opportune time to end the cycle of the karma of 7 generations, put it back when we talk about, and this is why so many things come up, whether it's incest, child exploitation, child sacrifice, human trafficking, lack of will and consent, gay rights, and wherever Saturn is, we're going to see it's a Saturn in Pisces. It's religion, medicine, drugs, traveling. Okay, so human trafficking as well, and those things are exposed. So we are letting go of these 7 generation, even way more than 7 generation timeline, and building something way more healthy instead, so that the teeth of the children no longer rot for the actions of the parents, because the actions of the parents won't make the teeth of the children rot. Okay, there's a difference if if the father or the parent lied to somebody, I don't know, needed money for food, and then they didn't feel comfortable to ask, so they were stealing or they were doing some trick with the finances, to where there was sacrificing children for the I don't know whatever they think they are communicating with. It's not Lucifer, it's not Venus, it's not Saturn or Satan, okay, or whatever that, okay, the whatever egregore they're feeding is not the way we practice occult today, and it's definitely not. It's an abuse of a cult. Okay, it's an abuse of a cult. It's an abuse of religion. Religion have a lot of things to fix. So does a cult. Okay, ethical energy boundaries and so on. But this is important to understand, so that we can sift and sort through those things that are coming up and address the issue. Yes, because if you want to address child exploitation, killing all the Jews is not going to help you with that. You're going to still have we still have child exploitation after World War II. It's not because Jews survived. It's because it's because they were addressing the common person, and they were not addressing the people who were actually practicing this child sacrifice, which has nothing to do with Judaism. Okay, so same with any other religion or lack of religion, but it's also important to understand that this has an quasi-religious or quasi-occultist attributes to it, so that you can know how to identify the problem. There is a feeding of a certain egregore, whether by certain sex rituals, which is why we have a sexual boundary violation in the astral field as well. And what we've seen, happening in various places in the world, okay, the mass Viagra rapes and the drugging people, whatnot, it's those things to sort of harvest on the energy. And I think Gigi Young explains it quite well. I agree with most of what she says there, even when we take it out of the kind of Christianity framework, which is important too. Because freedom of and from religion is necessary for a good life, both spiritually and not spiritually. And the other thing is the connection to finances. Okay, so this is basically elite making certain sacrifices to maintain certain control. And divide and conquer the people, and so there's a pyramidical structure. So those type of stuff coming up. If humanity can address this without falling into anti-Semitism or just going against the common people, if humanity can address the habits that are not good, then of course we can divert this, and we are meant to do this. We are meant to abolish expandable children, honor killings, um, sexual boundary violations, so on and so forth. This is what we're meant to do. So this marks the Jupituranus for me. And when I saw the interview, I think his name was John Rowland. John Rowland? I don't know. When I saw the interview, I saw that the interview that I was watching was from 2017. And immediately I was like, oh my God. This is serious. Now the moon is in 19 degrees Leo, exactly trining Chiron in Aries. Mercury is in the 18-degree retrograde of Aries, but the moon trining Chiron on the 19-degree is kind of alleviating certain pains. And for me, Aries is the second house. Okay, for one of my first jobs, it was difficult for me to find a job. And then, like every Ramat Gani person, it was in banking. And I come from a family of people who create, so creative people of the word. So it was unusual for me to do so, but everybody needs a job, and that was a painful experience for me there, where I began to be sick, and I was literally prescribed to create. I talk about this in other episodes, and then hearing this banker, actually after a very painful experience that I was, I guess, disdained to have, was kind of coming to terms with how pervasive was the praxis of expandable children and how many people are involved. And I really like Emily Iland, I think so, who I got to know by someone who was talking about our goal, actually. And she talked about yesterday about human trafficking and child trafficking, sex trafficking, and that's how I got to know the name of that banker. And she said, I feel helpless, and whistleblowers must amass to speak about this. And yes, these children are used as card of trust, which I talk about, and this ex-banker also talks about. Is that they tried to extort him, and actually when he came out of the bank, he went through physical torture because he could not do it anymore, and they made sure he would not speak. This basically reminded me of something that my psychologist did psychically when I left him, because he wanted me to not speak, and so he said, I cannot tell you like not to speak, but you must think about the words. And then I went through intense psychic torture, horrifying things, kind of the things that probably people. I don't even listen to the full testimonials of MK Ultra survivors, and I understand now that it's very much like those things. And I knew that. I told him the children would speak, and so I was within the torture, within everything, and things. Because you say things that you don't even understand, and you write everything. And I wrote to him, the children will speak, and I said after that, I went with this because I came to him after I was writing Sugar-Free Lemonade, and the academia story, which I partially told. And inside I knew, I was like, somebody has to expose this, and I guess it is the child or the children that were closer, or so I guess somebody has to speak that were closer to him, or maybe his children even, I don't know. And today, after 7th of October, when I see the literally MK Ultra South graffiti on the city of Beersheba, and the experience at the Nova, and later they erased it to the experience, Experience in Hebrew, chavaya is a psychological word, okay? Um, I can't help but thinking when I was patient with at him, I never told that to him because I didn't trust him. Um, and I saw things that are to do with MK Ultra and all these things. I didn't know where it was coming from, or was he trying to make me talk about these things and then say I'm crazy, or whatnot? Or was was he suspecting that I'm survivor of MK Ultra, or was he survivor, or was he perpetrator? But when I left, I was severely attacked, and I'm not sure 100% it came just from him, or maybe we were both attacked in the situation, but he would literally told me in the physical and threatened my life in the physical. So he was taking a very active part in this. Um, so and after 7th of October, I heard that there were villages of people who were hearing comments as if they were coming from Gaza. I'm sure if we talk to, not a lot of survivors from Gaza, I'm sure if we talk to people from Gaza, and because there is even more difficult to talk about these things. Okay, the relation to mental health is horrid. But I'm sure if they felt more safe, I'm sure that they would describe these things. Um, and this is and the argument, okay, what he threatened me, I said they don't know what's energy. And I said the world's gonna know what's energy, everybody's gonna know what's, I'm a scientist, everybody's gonna know what's energy. Yes, I didn't say this to him, but I told him the children will speak. But I say this to myself, and I follow through when something like this happens, and it is indeed my Pluto square. So when this banker talked about him, he went to physical torture. It reminded me very much of when I exited therapy, and after I began to expose him, the therapist. That was exactly what they do to people, so that they would not speak. But he managed to speak. He just could not mention names. And for me, when I see what's happening, yes, with that psychologist, it's very likely that there's something to do there with the 7th of October and the wars. And you see when this banker talks about, the elite that creates wars to divide and so on, and then uses child sacrifice. We saw this very, very closely. So this is also the importance of culture. Okay, if the culture allows for child brides, honor killings, a lack of full and consent, if it's culturally acceptable to do these things, then it's more difficult. And if there is mistreat of mental crisis, okay. So people who are growing in Finland and have open dialogue approach based with housing first, versus people who would grow in Palestine and on the one hand have visions and dreams and so on, and on the other hand there is tremendous mistreat to people who go to mental crisis in a horrid way. So of course it's easier to exploit such people. Yes, so this is totally kind of like second house. And Venus is invisible. So Venus invisible is not giving us the money right now. What she's giving us is the wisdom. And this, I think, Crassia Tassio for talking about invisible Venus. And she's giving us both protection from psychic attack. And Crossy will be making talismans, I think, of Venus in her invisible forms. It's highly expensive. So you wouldn't expect that, yes, but it would be. I think the cheaper ones are around $400, $350. because it's with the crystals and the metals and the ancient. She does it really the ancient crystals. Probably can go cheaper than that, even for the invisible Venus. But it's protection from psychic attack, and wisdom. Okay, so tremendous wisdom. Yes, Lilith is trining this Jupituranus right now. So it's going to be a lot of revelation, a lot of exposures. And I like the trine between Jupituranus and Lilith. It tells me that this is a lot about exposing scandals to do with just, those things that I talked about. And it's about Lilith figures evolving. So now Mercury is retrograde on the 18th degree of Aries, which is ruling Lilith tropically. But we can expect certain things and certain messages to be even sharper, to be even more true, even more comprehensive when Mercury goes direct. Okay, but definitely we are readdressing certain things. For me, it was the emphasis on the ritual aspect of child sacrifice, and the understanding that is part of what we're doing here. Yes, to expose. It's not something I knew about, and I told you I was saved from attempts to kidnap me at the hospital when I was very young. And this is not only that I am half Dutch, and it's something that unfortunately is prevalent, and half Israeli, so prevalent in both countries. I think we all have stories like this in our lineages. Okay, stories that are to do whether it's marrying way too young, and child abuse and stuff like that. So addressing this in our lineage and healing is important. A mindset I want to give you about this. First of all, we are at the time where Pluto is in Saturn's sign. So all the teachings of karma that's like, oh, it's happened because in past life, or this is a soul contract, or this is this, or this is that. Let's put it this way. If I think about a person who tried to kidnap me, has probably kidnapped a lot of children, then what I understand is that I don't want him to go to reincarnate as a child and go through torture. Okay? What I want is for this entire behavior to be abolished. It's no longer to be the reality, not on earth, not any place else. And so all the points of view that's like this happened because of this happened because of that, not relevant. Yes, if it helps you to cope and you're a survivor, fine. It's not the issue. But what I want you to understand is that no, you don't have to go through this. No, nobody has to go through this. No, there is no raison d'etre for going through this. This needs to be abolished. The world would be wonderful if we abolish it. It will flourish well. There would not be problem, not of overpopulation, not of underpopulation. And we can absolutely do without this. Okay? So you just keep that in mind. If it helps you, this mindset, then and yes, you can still find meaning in taking part in abolishing this praxis to the best of your abilities, and always be sensitive to your own boundaries in the process. It's a process of embodiment, not the lack of. Okay, so the point is not to take you out of yourself, but those who've been related to this, you are watching me because of that, but to bring you back into yourself. So you bring you back into yourself. Chiron is still on the degree of the eclipse. So this is, and the moon is trining it. So again, this is fated exposures. I saw so many people who observing the eclipse and were fated to be exposed to this eclipse. It's very powerful forces. Um, and yeah, it's very, very powerful forces. So a lot of endings, but here eclipse, solar eclipse here in the Rahu is about beginnings. That still are closures. Okay, some new beginning where you're at the closure of something with this Mercury retrograde. So you are having another beginning in a certain closure of something you already dealt with. Okay, think about 2017. I also want you to think about 1995. Okay, 2004, 2006, even. Yes, for me, I was working 2000, I think 5 to 2006, I was working for that credit card company. And yes, but also with the Jupituranus, there are going to be a lot of other things. It's going to be present with us for a while. Okay, so this is a very big week with very fated events. I said already, it's opportune time both with Jupiter that rules children, Mercury that rules children, Lilith in Mercury sign is a very opportune time to expose anything to do with exploitation of children, whether in trade, in religion as well. And as Jupiter will go first into Gemini, it will conjunct Sedna but trine Pluto. And then when Uranus goes into Gemini to conjunct Sedna and trine Pluto, Sedna is about infanticide, okay, and killing of a child because she didn't want to marry. Okay, this is the various Sedna verses, but I want you to get to know this verse already now, because those stories, Uranus is exposing shocking things. So it's a shocking discovery of these things, of these patterns, and maybe you will find out even from past life these patterns, but also from this life patterns in your lineage or patterns of behavior. And Pluto will already be in Aquarius at this time. So this is important to understand. We're beginning to expose those habits when they're associated with the elite, but it's also about unrooting all the beliefs and patterns that we as people have been having due to these practices. This is also a process of denucleification. The only way for Earth to survive as a planet is if we go through a process of denucleification. And for denucleification to happen, we need to tend to the masses of people that just want to poof out. So children are being exploited, people being tortured, and people being trafficked, refugees, and so on. But also people being in isolation or growing without love or stuff like that, kind of being ignored and lonely, is also an issue. And by tending to that, we already begin a process of denucleification. Okay, this mainly means that it's the telos of things to go in this way. The bumps in the roads, they're up and downs, they're this, they're that. That I thought that means that. I thought this person is okay. I thought this or that, or how pervasive it is. And with Neptune in Pisces, I talked about it's both our the best of our litigators and the best of our mystery, yes, researchers, and kind of like all the people and musicians and doctors and whatnot. So there's just a lot to unravel. And so this is in the process of being. Okay, so it's kind of like the old structure is being very much removed and very much exposed, and must go through a lot of changes.